There's something more dangerous than failing, and it's going your whole life without ever knowing who you could have really been. Because seeing yourself through the eyes of fear, guilt, or your past is like trying to fly with broken wings. But here's the truth. You are not who you think you are. You're so much more. You just haven't dared to find out yet. Today is the day you face yourself, and finally, you win. Most people never truly get to know themselves. They live trapped in a limited version of who they are, built from doubts, failures, and what others once said they were. But what if that version was nothing more than a shadow? Today you'll learn how to break through that distorted image and start seeing yourself clearly, with strength, with truth, with power. I'll show you how the great Stoic thinkers did it, how they built their identity from the inside out. No masks, no excuses, no fear of anyone or anything. Because changing the way you see yourself isn't just a mental exercise. It's so much more than that. It's the first step to changing your destiny. Are you ready to look yourself in the eye and never look away again? Stay with me until the end, and trust me, you'll walk away from this video overflowing with confidence, power, and courage. But before we begin, let me tell you Elena's story. Your life may look nothing like hers, but if you're here, you've probably felt like her at some point, invisible to the world, and worse, invisible to yourself. Elena had been working for over 10 years as a librarian in a public institution. Every day she gave her all, keeping the books in order, helping lost students, smiling kindly at visitors who asked for silence with more aggression than manners. But that morning was different. A new colleague, younger, more outgoing, was promoted to lead a new section of the library. And what hurt Elena most wasn't being left out. It was what she heard afterward. She's good, but she just doesn't have that leadership profile. A simple sentence thrown casually in a hallway was enough to shake her world. She went through the rest of the day on autopilot, checked inventory, answered emails, smiled like always. But inside, something had cracked. That night, when she turned off the lights and locked the main door, the silence wasn't peaceful. It echoed. An echo repeating again and again that maybe the comment was right, that maybe she'd never been enough, that her place was in the background as support in the shadows. And in that thought, as she lowered the blinds of the ancient philosophy section, she felt like she wasn't just closing the library. She was closing herself off, too. That's when her eyes landed, almost by accident, on a dusty little corner she'd never properly cleaned. There, discreetly hanging, was a black and white portrait of Epictetus, with a quote etched into a metal plaque. It's not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. And in that moment, something changed, not instantly. No epic music played in the background, just a different kind of silence, one that didn't suffocate her anymore, but invited her to look inward. For the first time, Elena didn't ask why others didn't value her, but why she didn't. Why she had let her worth depend on something someone else said. Why she had built her identity out of the bricks others had thrown at her. That night when she got home, she opened a fresh notebook and wrote on the first page, "Who am I if no one has an opinion about me?" And without realizing it, that question marked the beginning of her transformation. She didn't quit her job. She didn't confront anyone. She didn't need to make noise to change. She simply started seeing herself differently. She began speaking to herself with more respect. She began to recognize that yes, she was calm, reserved, not the type to show off. But that wasn't weakness. That was her way of leading, through consistency, through listening, through care. She started joining meetings without waiting for validation, started sharing ideas without worrying whether they were innovative enough. She began to see herself for who she truly was, a strong, skilled woman with years of experience who didn't need anyone's permission to shine. And even though everything around her stayed the same, Elena was no longer the same person. Because the real change wasn't on the outside. It was in the way she saw herself. She realized she could never control what others said about her, but she could choose to stop believing it. As the Stoics taught, the power doesn't lie in what happens. but in what you do with it. And she chose to rebuild herself from the inside out. No masks, no excuses, and for the first time, no fear of her own greatness. And if you're here, maybe you're also stuck in a limited version of yourself. Maybe you're still believing what others said you were. But let me tell you something. You are not that critical voice in your head. You are not your mistakes. You are not your doubts. You are who you decide to be from today on. My friend, before we continue, if this content is bringing you value, consider subscribing and becoming an exclusive member to access unique benefits. And tell us in the comments, what about you? Are you seeing yourself for who you truly are? Or are you still seeing yourself through someone else's eyes? Or just write, I am Stoic. Today I change the way I see myself. Let's begin. 1. Stop fighting the mirror. Look at yourself. Really look. Look at yourself as if you were seeing someone you love deeply. Because if every morning you stand in front of the mirror just to remind yourself of what you lack, what you didn't do right, what you're not, then you don't need enemies. You've already got one yourself. I hate to be the one to tell you this, but that reflection you judge every day isn't the problem. The problem is the way you look at it. Like it's an error report. Like you're not seeing a face, but a list of failures. And the worst part is, you believe it. You've made that image your truth. And it doesn't matter how many times someone tells you you're worthy, that you're enough, that there's something special in you. If you don't say it first, nothing will change. Stop fighting the mirror because you didn't come into this world to spend your life pointing out your flaws. You came here to grow, to learn, to move forward. And for that, the first thing you need to change isn't your body or your life or your past. It's the way you see yourself. Imagine you're a sculptor, and every thought you have about yourself is a strike of the chisel. If every day you tell yourself you're weak, that you're useless, that no one will value you, what kind of statue are you sculpting? Michelangelo's David? Of course not. You won't carve out a strong, dignified, powerful figure. You'll end up with a cracked block of marble, shapeless, lifeless. Ah, my friend, listen to me. What you think about yourself matters, and way more than you realize, because it shapes how you move through the world. If you believe you're worthless, you walk in fear. If you believe you can't, you won't even try. If you believe you're less, you settle for less. And like that, little by little, you turn a lie into your reality. Do you know what Epictetus used to do? Before responding to the world's insults, he would ask himself if he actually believed what they were saying. And if he didn't, he let it go. Because he understood something you also need to understand. You're not what others see in you. You're not even what you see when you look at yourself through judgment. You are who you decide to be when you look at yourself with kindness, with love, with understanding. And here comes the hardest part. Many people don't change their lives because they're waiting to change their appearance. When I lose weight, I'll feel better. When I succeed, I'll see myself differently. When I love myself more, I'll stop criticizing myself. Nonsense, that's not how it works, it's the other way around. First, you look at yourself with respect. First, you decide to see yourself differently. And then, like magic, you start to act differently, speak differently, choose differently. Because you're not fixing yourself anymore. You're building yourself. Ask yourself this uncomfortable question. If you were someone else, would you want to live inside you? Would you enjoy spending a day listening to your own thoughts? Would you treat yourself the way you treat the people you love? If the answer is no, then it's time to make peace. To stop turning your reflection into a war zone. To stop quietly insulting yourself every morning. A woman once told me something I've never forgotten. I didn't see myself as ugly. I saw myself as sad. I saw someone who had given up on herself. And that's what the mirror truly reflects. Not your looks, but your self-treatment, your attitude, your inner story. And that you can change. Start today. Do what the Stoics did. Train your inner gaze. When you walk into the bathroom and catch your reflection out of the corner of your eye, don't throw a silent insult at it. Look at yourself with compassion. Say something that builds instead of tears down. Say, I'm growing. I'm doing the best I can. I am enough, even if I can't see it today. And if you don't believe it at first, that's fine. Say it anyway, because that consistency is what starts cracking through the old image. And in time, you'll see something new, someone new. Remember, you can't change your life if every day you're fighting against yourself. And the first step to winning that battle is to stop fighting the mirror. 2. Take off the labels others put on you. Since we're kids, people start hanging labels on us like we're jars lined up on a shelf. The shy one, the intense one, the mess, the one who gets mad about everything, the one who never finishes anything. And the most dangerous part isn't that they label you, it's that you believe it. After hearing them so often, you start wearing them like they're part of your skin. Without even noticing, you begin living according to what others said you were. You act the way people expect you to. You limit yourself as if your path were already written. You hide inside a role you didn't choose, just to keep everyone else comfortable. And do you know what's truly tragic about this? The longer it goes on, the harder it gets to tell the difference between who you are and what they told you you were. It's like those labels got glued to your identity with industrial-strength adhesive. But here's the truth. You weren't born with any of those labels. They were given to you, and since they were given, you can take them off. In fact, psychology has a name for this, the self-fulfilling prophecy. When you believe you're a certain way, you start acting like it. And eventually you confirm the label, even if it isn't true. It's like living trapped in a script someone else wrote for you. And here's your reminder. You're not obligated to keep playing that role. You can tear up the script and start writing your own. American psychologist Carl Rogers, one of the most influential thinkers of the 20th century, devoted much of his life to this subject. He once said something as simple as, "It is powerful." The only person who is educated is the one who has learned how to change and adapt. Because to Rogers, identity wasn't a fixed structure, it was a process, a constant movement, a never-ending discovery. And do you know what that means? That if today you choose to leave behind what others made you believe, you can start discovering who you really are. Let's be clear. You are not what your mother said when she was frustrated. You are not what your teacher shouted the day you were late. You are not what your ex repeated during a fight. Those voices don't define you. They hurt you, yes, but they didn't build you. Here's the best advice you'll hear today. Do a mental cleanup. Open the drawer where you've stored everything people have ever called you, and start throwing out what you don't need. Insecure, clumsy, too much, not enough. Trash it. And if that's hard to do, try this. Ask yourself if that label comes from someone else's fear, because more often than not, what people told us we were was just a reflection of what they didn't know how to handle. And here comes another hit of reality. When you believe a false label about yourself, you start acting below your potential, because you're no longer being guided by your abilities, but by your limiting beliefs. This is where the Stoic teachings shine brightest, because the Stoics understood this centuries before modern psychology gave it a name. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with his usual clarity. A man's life is what his thoughts make of it. And what's more destructive than a false label? If your mind is trapped in ideas that others planted there, you'll end up living a life that isn't even yours. That's why, for the Stoics, true freedom begins with being mindful of what you allow yourself to believe about yourself. Because that perspective changes everything. Today is the day to break free. You don't have to shout it to the world. You don't have to explain anything to anyone. You just need to look yourself in the eye and say, "That thing they said I was doesn't define me anymore." And when you do, you'll feel something strange, relief. Like finally taking off a coat that was never yours. Like finally breathing as yourself, without asking for permission. The only thing you truly are is who you choose to be from this moment on. So do yourself a favor, break the label, and start living as who you are, not who they told you to be. 3. Your mistakes don't make you less, they make you real. You have to stop treating yourself like your mistakes are a life sentence. You mess up, do something wrong, act on impulse, and right away the self-whipping begins. How could I do that? What a disappointment. I'm never going to change. And you repeat it over and over again as if beating yourself up is going to make you a better person. But it doesn't. It only weakens you. Let me make this clear. Making mistakes doesn't take away your worth. It reminds you that you're alive. We mess up because we try, because we take risks, because we're not machines. Or did you really think reaching your best self was going to be a clean, straight path? If everything went perfectly from the start, you wouldn't be growing. You'd be faking it. Once I made a mistake that hurt a close friend of mine. I told him, "I'm sorry I acted that way. I was wrong." And my friend simply said, "Good. That means you're awake." Wow. I thought the friendship was over. I expected him to scold me or hold it against me, but no. Instead, my friend responded like a Stoic. Because that answer, simple but powerful, is deeply Stoic. You see, the Stoics didn't aim for some inhuman perfection. They aimed for coherence, for living in line with reason, knowing that falling is part of the process, and that every fall is a chance to rise with more wisdom. Epictetus put it plainly, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Because if you're afraid of messing up or looking bad, you'll never take risks. And if you don't take risks, you're not really living." It's that simple. Picture a ceramic cup that breaks. Instead of throwing it away, someone repairs it with a resin mixed with gold powder. That crack, instead of being hidden, becomes part of the design. In Japan, this is called kintsugi, and it teaches you something you need to hear today. You're not less because of your breaks. You're more because you found a way to put yourself back together with dignity. Every time you forgive yourself and learn, you're doing your own internal kintsugi. You're not denying the mistake, but you're not turning it into your identity either. You integrate it. You make it part of your story. And that makes you real. The problem isn't making a mistake. The problem is staying stuck there, believing that's all you are. Seneca said it powerfully. We do not dare to do many things because they are difficult, but they are difficult because we do not dare. A mistake only becomes huge when you fear it, when you run from it instead of facing it. Look around you, the people you admire most. Do you think they got where they are without failing? No. What makes them admirable isn't that they never messed up. It's that they used each mistake as a step up, not an excuse to quit. You can do the same. But first, you need to stop relating to your mistakes as if they're stains on your soul. They're not. They're part of the process. They're proof that you're working on yourself, that you're building something real and lasting. Think of the fire that forges steel. Without heat, without strikes, without pressure, there is no sword. You're the same. Every mistake is part of the fire that's shaping you. Don't run from it. Thank it for what it's teaching you. So next time you remember something you did wrong, don't drown in shame. Breathe, observe, learn, and talk about it with someone who sees you kindly. Sometimes all it takes is one conversation to dissolve guilt and put things back in place. And don't forget to write down what you learned, not to punish yourself, but to turn that moment into wisdom. Because when you keep a record, you're less likely to fall into the same blind spot twice. If you're growing, you're going to fail. And that's not weakness, it's humanity. Your mistakes are not proof that you're useless. They're signs that you're trying, that you haven't given up, and that you have the courage to look at yourself, even when you don't like what you see. And that makes you way stronger than you think. 4. You are not your enemy. Stop talking to yourself like you are. Imagine for a second that a stranger walks up to you on the street and starts saying, "You're a mess. You can't do anything right. Who do you think you are trying something like that?" What would you do? Would you listen carefully, agree with them, invite them to follow you around all day? Of course not. You'd step away. You'd defend yourself. You'd leave. And yet, there you are, again and again, saying things to yourself that you wouldn't accept from anyone else. You wake up, eat breakfast, go to work, and live side by side with that inner voice that shows no mercy. A voice that never stops criticizing, that forgets nothing, that forgives nothing. And worst of all, it sounds like the truth because it comes from inside. Think about it. If a friend spoke to you that way, you wouldn't even have coffee with them. If your coach treated you like that, you would have quit the team ages ago. But since the voice is internal, you let it stay. And every day it whispers, "You're worthless, you failed again, you're not enough." Does that sound familiar? We've gotten used to talking to ourselves like enemies, living in conflict with ourselves. And we don't realize how much that affects everything, because no one can move forward with clarity when they're accompanied by a voice that constantly sabotages them. No one can change their life if they can't even trust themselves. Epictetus taught that no one can be forced to hold an opinion about themselves. Only you decide what to think of you. And that's the point. It's not about what others say. It's not even about what happens. It's about what you allow yourself to think. It's about the way you choose to speak to yourself, because that voice becomes the image you have of yourself, and that image changes everything. Every word you say to yourself is like a drop falling on a stone. You may not notice its effect right away, but it shapes you. And if day after day you keep repeating that you're useless, that you're weak, that you're never going to make it, that voice becomes your mirror. You start to see yourself as small, as limited, as someone who doesn't even have permission to dream. And then you stop moving forward, not because you can't, but because you believe you can't. Climbing a mountain is hard, it's cold, you're carrying weight. Sometimes you can't even see the summit. But imagine if every 2 steps you push yourself back down. That's exactly what we do when we talk to ourselves with harshness and no fairness. When we react to mistakes with internal insults. When we repeat a script of defeat that wasn't even ours to begin with, but something someone once said that we chose to keep. Marcus Aurelius knew it. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And if you really want to change the way you see yourself, if you want to start living from a different place, stronger, freer, braver, then you have to change the colors you're using to paint yourself. Speaking to yourself like your worst critic only reinforces that broken image of you. But speaking to yourself like someone who wants to help, like someone who respects you, that's when the rebuilding begins. So next time something doesn't go your way, stop, breathe, and don't punish yourself. Correct it, yes. Learn from it, absolutely. But do it from guidance, not from contempt. Say something new, something that sounds like, "I'm learning," or "I don't have it yet, but I will." And then do something that reinforces that new voice. Get up without complaining. Do the task you've been avoiding. Look in the mirror with respect, even if you don't like what you see today. Because every one of those actions reinforces the right image. That of someone who treats themselves well in order to become strong. My friend, the world out there is already cold enough. You don't need more enemies on your path. What you really need is to become your greatest ally. 5. Stop measuring yourself with someone else's ruler. What if I told you that most of your insecurities don't actually come from you, but from measuring yourself with a ruler that isn't yours? It's that cruel. You measure your worth by how many "I love yous" your partner says, your decisions by your family's expectations, your life by some influencer's curated highlight reel. And when you don't fit, you think you're the problem. But hear this. If you're using the wrong ruler, you'll always come out measuring wrong. You compare yourself to the life of someone you don't even know, to the goals of someone who doesn't live like you, to the ideas of someone who's never been in your shoes, and then you punish yourself for not measuring up. Let me tell you something you might relate to. It's Saturday night. You're at home. You open your phone and see someone your age with a huge house, perfect partner, movie star smile. Someone else is out giving talks around the world, and you're sitting there with cold pizza scrolling through stories in your pajamas. And you think, what am I doing with my life? Sound familiar? Has that ever happened to you? Because it's happened to all of us. And now comes the uncomfortable question. How much of what you do in your life is something you actually chose? And how much do you do just to feel like you're not falling behind? If that question stings a little, maybe you've been measuring your worth for too long with a ruler someone else handed to you. The Stoics had an advantage over us. They didn't go around comparing themselves to the world. They compared themselves to themselves. Epictetus gave us a golden reminder that couldn't be more relevant today. Seek to be no more than yourself, and be that completely. Ah, that, my friend, is wisdom. It's time to stop looking outward and start improving from within. No filters, no masks, no comparisons. You didn't come here to be a copy of anyone, or to be the missing piece in someone else's puzzle. You came to develop your own virtue, to grow from your own reality, to move forward from what you have, not from what the world says you should have. Constant comparison is like running a marathon in borrowed shoes. They might look great, but they're going to hurt you. And the worst part? At the end, you won't even know if you won anything. You'll just feel like you weren't enough. Each person has their own soil to plant in. Some bloom at 20, others at 40. But if you're growing oranges and you compare yourself to someone harvesting roses, you'll always think your tree is useless. It's not. It just needs time, patience, quiet, and for you to stop staring into someone else's garden. If you really want to change the way you see yourself, you have to stop using other people's eyes as your mirror. That is the root of the problem. You think you only have value if you meet certain standards. But here's a truth that might hurt, or set you free. No matter how well you do, you're never going to meet everyone's rules. So it's time to start following your own. Look at yourself and ask, does what I'm doing represent me? Is this goal mine? Or did I copy it from someone else? Does the life I'm living make me feel alive, or just accepted? And if the answer doesn't sit right with you, then you know what to do. Break the ruler. And how do you start? Here are 2 simple steps you can take today. First, unfollow every account for 1 week that makes you compare yourself. Not forever, just long enough to clear your vision. Only keep the ones that inspire you to grow, not the ones that make you feel less than. Second, every morning, write down 1 goal that's truly yours. Not something that sounds impressive online or makes others clap. Something you genuinely want, even if it's as simple as having more peace or getting your energy back. Because moving 1 inch forward on your own path is better than running 100 meters in the wrong direction. And once you start walking like that, without the pressure to meet other people's expectations, something changes. You start to see yourself differently, not as someone who's falling short, but as someone who's finally walking with purpose. 6. Stop acting you don't need to. My friend, you're not a character in a soap opera. You didn't come here to play a role, to please everyone, or to always say what's expected. You came to live, to discover, to make mistakes and grow from who you truly are. So why are you still acting? Some people have been pretending for so long that they don't even remember what it feels like to speak without fear or walk without pressure. Every morning, they put on an invisible mask. The mask of the perfect, responsible one, the unbreakable, strong one, the friendly one, even when they don't feel like talking to anyone. And by the end of the day, they're exhausted. Not from what they do, but from everything they hold back. A study published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology showed that people who live in conflict between what they feel and what they express suffer from higher levels of anxiety, emotional exhaustion, and worse. They lose their sense of purpose, they forget what matters to them, they feel empty. Constant pretending doesn't just drain you, it erases you. Bit by bit, you disconnect from yourself, until one day, after so much acting, you forget who you really were. But listen, you don't have to do it anymore, you don't have to imitate anyone. You don't have to force yourself into molds that don't fit you. You don't have to be like Denzel Washington or Brad Pitt. They're already them. There's no need for a copy, no matter how successful they are. Do you think they earned their fame by trying to act like the next guy? Of course not. And that's the trick. Those who truly stood out in any field did so by having their own voice, a presence that didn't imitate anyone, an identity that didn't need a costume. Now tell me, do you think Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome and one of the most quoted philosophers in history, woke up thinking, "I'm going to act like Seneca today"? Of course not. Because when you know who you are, you don't need to copy anyone. You just need to stay true to yourself. Stoicism repeats this over and over again. Live according to your nature. Not according to others' expectations, not according to what people praise, not according to what's trending. Greatness for the Stoics wasn't found in appearances. It was in the alignment between what you think, what you feel, and what you do. Marcus Aurelius wrote it like this: "Don't waste any more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Because performing for others is exactly that, arguing with your inner truth, betraying your essence, and there's nothing more exhausting than that. So let me ask you something. Who would you be if you stopped acting for just one day? What would you say no to? What would you stop doing? What version of you would show up if no one were watching? Because right there, that's where transformation begins. When you take off the costume and dare to speak in your own voice, to think like yourself, to decide without fear of disappointing others. You don't have to change everything overnight. Sometimes it's enough to just notice the moment when you're pretending and choose something different. Stay quiet when you'd normally explain yourself. Say what you mean without sugarcoating it. Be honest about what's bothering you, even if it doesn't sound nice. That, though it seems small, is an act of power. Because you're no longer protecting an image, you're protecting your identity. You can also start by respecting the things you already do with authenticity. Those moments when you're not trying to impress, when your voice sounds like your own. No filters, no exaggeration. Hold on to that. Strengthen it, give it more room. Because when you stop acting, something incredible happens. You finally start seeing yourself. And what you see is truly you. Tell me in the comments, who are you pretending to be? What part of your life are you afraid to show as it really is? And most importantly, write down how you're going to commit to changing that today. Make it public, commit to yourself, so that finally, your real self wins the battle. 7. See yourself as a precious jewel. Some time ago, I met a young woman named Maria. She worked in a modest neighborhood cafe, the kind where the coffee tastes like conversation. She was always smiling, served with patience, and had a calm energy that made everyone feel at ease. Maria knew all her customers, remembered their names, knew their preferences, and always tried to make everyone's day a little better. But what stood out the most was something else. The way she constantly diminished herself without even noticing. Every time someone said, "You're so organized, it's clear you're really good at what you do," she would look down and answer, "It's nothing. Anyone could do it." If a customer complimented her kindness, she'd say, "Well, I just try not to get in the way." And if someone praised how good her coffee was, she'd reply, "Pfft, I do what I can with what I have. I've been doing this for years. Would be pretty bad if it wasn't good by now." And it was like that with everything. Maria was praised by everyone, loved by everyone who came through her door, and still, it was clear how indifferent she was toward herself. And it wasn't that she lacked value, of course not. You know what it was? That no one had ever taught her how to see it. No one at home ever told her how good she was with people, how smart she was with numbers, or how naturally she managed her business. And that's the story of so many of us. The world is full of people with light, with talent, with generosity, who don't realize they've spent years treating themselves like background decoration, like their story doesn't deserve the spotlight. And that's what I want you to understand today. Because changing the way you see yourself also means learning to treat yourself as someone who has worth. Like a jewel. Like something that deserves care, admiration, and respect. The poet Khalil Gibran wrote it like this: "If you knew what a treasure you are, you wouldn't go begging for affection and attention." And he was right. Because when you don't see your own worth, you settle for crumbs, for half-hearted affection, for jobs where you're never acknowledged, for relationships where they dim your light. Stoicism teaches us to look inward with honesty, yes, but also with dignity. Epictetus put it clearly, no one who respects themselves will lower their worth just to please others, because someone who knows their value doesn't sell themselves for approval. They live from who they are. They stand tall, even if others can't see it. The Stoics knew that true greatness doesn't come from being approved by many, but from living according to your virtue. And do you know where virtue begins? In how you treat yourself. And yes, I know. It's not easy to learn how to value yourself, especially when you've spent years telling yourself you're not enough, or when others made you believe your shine was a burden. But there's no way around it. If you don't do it, no one else can do it for you. Start with this. Speak about yourself with more respect. Stop saying things like, I'm nothing special, or I just got lucky. Replace that with, this took effort but I made it, or, yeah, I'm good at this, and I'm glad you noticed. Surround yourself with people who see you in a kind light. You don't need fake compliments, but you do need people who remind you of who you are when you forget. Stay away from those who dim your light to make theirs shine brighter. And don't forget, treat yourself like someone you admire. That includes how you speak to yourself, how you take care of yourself, how you stand up for yourself, and how you make choices. Don't wait for someone else to value you. Start with you, every single day, because when you change the way you look at yourself, everything starts to align. Your decisions, your boundaries, your dreams, everything becomes clearer. And you deserve that clarity, you deserve to be seen, but first, by yourself. 8. Stop hiding your light. Do you know one of the saddest ways people sabotage themselves? Believing that in order not to bother anyone, not to stand out, not to seem arrogant, they have to hide what makes them unique. And so many people do it. So many shine on the inside but dim themselves on the outside. Not because they lack light, but because they've learned that shining is dangerous. Because at some point someone made them feel like being authentic was too much. The Stoics didn't believe in shrinking to fit in. Epictetus was a slave, then a free man, then a teacher. And even so, he said, don't be ashamed to ask for help. Your task is to show yourself as you are. Because hiding who you are out of fear of judgment is the same as betraying yourself. And you? Are you showing up as you truly are? Or are you hiding your essence just to avoid making others uncomfortable? Psychology backs this up. Carl Jung explained it with painful clarity. What you deny submits you. What you accept transforms you. Because what you repress grows inside you and makes you smaller. But when you accept your light, when you let your voice out, your ideas, your energy, your creativity, something inside you is set free, and finally you begin to see yourself. Picture this. You're like a flashlight kept in a drawer. It works, the battery's full, everything's intact, but it gives off no light. Why? Because it hasn't been turned on, because no one took it out. That's how many people live, turned off, not because they're incapable, but because they're afraid. Afraid of shining too bright. Afraid others will walk away if they see their true power. Afraid to stand out when the world around them taught them to stay quiet. But let me tell you something that might hurt. Hiding your light is not humility, it's waste. Your way of seeing the world, your ability to inspire, your talent for connecting, for creating, for saying things others need to hear, all of that has value. And when you choose to hide it, you're living half a life. Don't you sometimes feel like there's something inside you pushing to come out? That idea you don't share, that feeling you suppress, that version of you, stronger, freer, that you know exists but won't let fully live. Until when? You don't need a stage to shine. Sometimes your light shows up in a gesture, in a sincere word, in a firm decision, in refusing to stay silent when something matters to you. To shine isn't to shout. To shine is to dare to be fully present. And if you're scared, good. Let it scare you, but do it anyway. Because no one transforms by hiding, and no one can truly respect themselves if they reject who they are every single day. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Happiness lies in doing what human nature demands." And what does your nature demand? That you be you, not a copy, not a tamed version. You, with your truth, your gifts, your fire. And if Seneca were walking through these streets today and saw so many people shut down on the inside wearing masks on the outside, do you know what he'd do? He'd stop, look one of them in the eye, maybe you, and say what he wrote so firmly. As long as you live, keep learning how to live. Because for the Stoics, to live meant this: daring to be yourself in a world that wants you quiet, uniform, and harmless. And if you don't dare today, then when? So stop hiding what's burning inside you. You're doing the world no favors by dressing yourself in shadow. You weren't made to blend in. You were made to lead. And even if you don't see it yet, someone out there needs the light you're still holding back. Today, even if it's just a spark, let it out. 9. Everything changes when you decide to change. There are days when you look in the mirror and you're not quite sure who's looking back. Not because you've changed on the outside, but because you no longer recognize yourself on the inside. You feel like you're shrinking inside your own life. Like the version of you that you're showing isn't the real one. Like there's something asleep, shut down, on pause. And still, you keep waiting for something outside to fix it. But here's a truth the Stoics left us, etched in fire. He who wants to improve must do so by choice, not by chance. You can't control whether the world is fair today, whether people are kind, or whether everything goes according to plan. But there is one thing you can do that changes everything. You can decide to see yourself differently, because that's the root. Not changing for the sake of changing. Changing because you finally understand that you can't keep treating yourself like someone small, someone limited, someone invisible. Marcus Aurelius said it with a clarity that still cuts through the noise. What is not good for the hive is not good for the bee. And that also means that what isn't good for your inner growth can't be good for your whole life. If the way you see yourself is toxic, defeatist, and shrunken, how can you expect your surroundings, your decisions, your direction to be any different? The Stoics understood this well. The external world doesn't always change, but the inner world, you can shape it like marble. And when you shift your inner dialogue, your posture, your mindset, your focus, it's like turning the key to a door that's been locked for years. Everything begins with the smallest gesture. You get up without complaining. You speak to yourself with respect. You stop asking for permission to be who you are, because you don't need everything around you to be perfect. What you do need is to make one decision that marks a before and after. You're no longer going to live as a shadow of yourself. Starting today, you'll treat yourself like someone who deserves to build something new. And yes, it's uncomfortable, because that decision means changing old patterns, breaking inertia, facing what you don't like. But as Seneca said, the noble soul is ashamed when its actions fall short of its words. Don't you feel that sometimes? That you make promises to yourself that you don't follow through on? That you know you could give more, be more, but you don't dare? Today, just for today, dare. Not with grand promises, with concrete actions. Change your rhythm. Change how you start the day. Change how you speak to yourself when you mess up. Not as a challenge, but because you finally understand that you deserve to leave behind the version of you that only survived and begin to build the one that wants to live. And if you don't know where to start, keep it simple. Choose one thought, one gesture, one word you want to change today. Do it without expecting recognition. Do it because what you build on the inside shows on the outside. And if you've made it this far, you need to hear this. Nothing you've changed so far will truly stick, unless you do what I'm about to tell you in the final point. Because to start valuing yourself again, to reclaim your strength, and to see yourself clearly, there's one last decision you need to make, one that changes everything from the inside out. Stick around, because in the next point, you'll understand why you should never stop doing it. 10. Remember the child you once were. Before the doubts, before the insecurities, before someone made you feel like you weren't enough, there was a moment when you were just you. No filters, no masks, no fear of judgment. That child who laughed out loud, who got excited over simple things, who spoke their mind without guilt, is still inside you. They've just gone quiet. And now that you've come all this way to see yourself clearly again, there's something you can't leave behind. Your origin, your center, your purest truth. Because no one can fully rebuild themselves without honoring where they come from. Marcus Aurelius wrote it with calm and wisdom. Return to yourself as often as necessary. And he wasn't just talking about quieting the mind. He meant coming back to that inner place where everything begins, where there's no noise, where who you are makes sense, where external judgment no longer matters, because you recognize yourself. Modern psychology says the same thing, just in different words. Carl Rogers, one of the fathers of humanistic therapy, made it clear. The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. And that's exactly what happens when you reconnect with the child you once were. You don't do it to stay stuck in the past. You do it to accept yourself at the root, to stop fighting against who you are, and to begin healing from the source. Recent psychological studies show that reconnecting with your personal story, your original desires, and the parts of yourself you once rejected leads to greater emotional stability, genuine self-esteem, and a clearer sense of identity. Because the problem isn't what you're missing today, it's what you've forgotten you already had from the very beginning. The Stoics understood this. Virtue already lives within you. It doesn't need to be built from scratch. It just needs to be remembered, nurtured, and lived by. And in that remembering is the child who had no fear of being real. So I ask you, with all the strength this point deserves, what would that child think of you if they saw you today? Would they be proud of the way you speak to yourself? Of what you're putting up with? Of how you're treating yourself? Coming back to yourself is not weakness. It's the greatest act of power. Because when you do, you stop living like someone who just endures and start living like someone who respects themselves. And if you don't know where to start, do this. Start by being mindful of how you talk to yourself. Don't say anything you wouldn't say to that child you once were. Bring back what used to light you up, not to live in the past, but to remember what genuinely moved you, what brought you joy without needing anyone's approval. And most importantly, make yourself a firm promise. From today on, you'll treat yourself like someone worthy, not like someone broken, not like a project, but like a complete person who just needs to stop forgetting, because that child is still there, and they're waiting for you to finally see them again. When you do, you'll see yourself differently, because you'll have come home to you. Changing the way you see yourself isn't some surface-level gesture. It's a return to your truth. It's choosing to stop living with a broken image. It's the decision to stop hiding just to fit in, and to finally look at yourself through the clear eyes of someone who no longer betrays themselves. This path isn't always easy, but trust me, it's worth it. Because every time you choose to speak to yourself with respect, every time you stop pretending, every time you decide not to compare yourself anymore, you're rebuilding your identity from truth, not from fear. If you've made it this far, drop this in the comments. I'm starting to see myself for who I really am. And remember this, you don't need to fit into what others expect. You just need to fit with yourself. That way, I'll know who the true Stoic warriors are who made it to the end. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell, and give this video a like so you don't miss out on what's coming next. I also invite you to check out our playlist, which you'll see on the screen. It's packed with ideas, stories, and advice to help you navigate life with more wisdom and confidence. Click it, and let's keep moving forward together. Until next time, take care and keep embracing your inner Stoic.